Hello and welcome back to Sandra's Shelf, where I talk all things mental health, self-help, and lifestyle. So today I wanted to talk about something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, and something that I feel like has been shifting in my head and that I've been trying to understand. How did I go from last year feeling like I didn't want to live my life, I didn't want to be here anymore, and now feeling the complete opposite and really embracing everyday life even when things get tough, and things do get tough and they get tough often. And so there's no secret on this channel that I struggled with mental health, that I have borderline personality disorder, and just a lot of baggage and trauma, right? So for me to sit here and be like, I am so happy with life, I want to live my life, I want to live a long and healthy life, might sound kind of weird coming from someone who has BPD and coming from someone who struggled actively for 12 years with self-harm and staying sober, basically. Now, some of you have watched my recovery videos, some of you have been watching this channel since it first started, and I've been disappearing, dealing with stuff, coming back, disappearing, dealing with stuff, and then I took the decision to actually come back. And this year so far, I've been really committing not only to this channel but other channel, not only to like YouTube but my career and everything that I do, right? And it looks like from the outside it was like a overnight shift or instant shift, but however, for me, I know that it took me a long time, and every month, every week, every second, I'm learning something new about life, and I'm learning something new about myself and how I react to everyday life. So essentially all this to say that I really took the time to observe myself, to observe what the hell is going on and what the hell has been going on in my life, in my brain, in my, immune system, everything that has ever felt like dysregulated or wrong inside of me. And it took me a long time to realize that I'm not wrong. There's nothing wrong per se with me. And it's just that I didn't have the right tools or the right vocabulary or the right understanding of how things should work, because obviously when you grow up in an environment and you grow up around certain people, you think that life should be one way. And I think that's also ties into adulthood, where you slowly start to realize that maybe you are different from the people you grew up with. Maybe you handle things differently. Maybe you understand something that your parents, your friends, your siblings don't understand. And it's not to say that your way is better than others. All this to say that if that's the way that brings you out of the darkness, then that's your way that brings you out of the darkness. Everyone has different paths in life, and I really resonate with that statement. Life story out of the way, let's talk about what I learned about happiness. As you guys know, I love reading and writing, and a lot of my conclusions in life come from the media that I've absorbed. And so this time is like no other. There's this book that I just recently finished that really had me thinking even more and pushing my thoughts and pushing my feelings around happiness, and it's this book here. It's A New Earth: Awakening to Your Life's Purpose by Eckhart Tolle. And I read his previous book about a few years ago, and that book also transformed the way I was seeing things. However, I wasn't ready to absorb that message yet, and I think this book does a great job as a follow-up. And this one just further pushes you to think like, oh, wait a minute, why have I been doing this like this, or why have I been thinking about life this way? So I really enjoyed this one. I really highly recommend it, and I'm also going to read some passages from this book. So one of the first things I learned about happiness is that if you want to be happy, you have to not focus on the unhappiness. And what I mean by that, it's not that you have to ignore all your life problems. Obviously, like if you're in recovery or if you deal with substance abuse, you can't just be like, oh, I'm going to ignore my substance abuse problem. That's not how it works. That's kind of how you develop a substance abuse problem, because you ignored that you had a deeper problem, right? So in that sense, I don't mean like you have to just like pretend in a reality where nothing is, touching you, or nothing is coming at you, and nothing is, dampening your mood. What it means is that you need to separate, okay, to observe your unhappiness and to understand where it's coming from. And even if you don't understand, to at least accept it and stop being resistant. And this makes sense to me because another thing that I've been understanding lately is the law of attraction. It's like that saying, what you resist persists. So if you keep resisting your unhappiness, you're gonna keep being unhappy. Eckhart Tolle says, if there is unhappiness in you, first you need to acknowledge that it is there. But don't say, I'm unhappy. Unhappiness has nothing to do with who you are. Say, there is unhappiness in me. Then investigate it. A situation you find yourself in may have something to do with it. Action may be required to change the situation or remove yourself from it. If there is nothing you can do, face what is and say, well, right now this is how it is. I can either accept it or make myself miserable. The primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but your thoughts about it. Be aware of the thoughts you are thinking. Separate them from the situation, which is always neutral, which is always is as it is. There is the situation or the fact, and here are my thoughts about it. Instead of making up stories, stay with the facts. And that's the thing about unhappiness, and that's why a lot of us recreate generational trauma, and that's why a lot of us keep going into these cycles and these behavior patterns, is because we're unconscious to how we're acting and how we're letting the outside environment control us, and we go through these stories in repetition where we're always the victim and we're always stuck and miserable, and we're always identifying with our thoughts and emotions where we think, okay, because I'm thinking this, because I'm feeling this, this is what I am. But that is a complete lie, because your emotions and your thoughts can change at any time, and you can make them change at any time. And literally all you have to do is sit, okay, and spend a day or two just to observe, what are you thinking? How many negative thoughts you have versus positive? How many bad emotions you have versus, positive emotions? And then you think to yourself, okay, what can I do to help this? What can I do to disentangle myself from these emotions, whether bad or whether good? Now, going back to the narratives we tell ourselves, which actually promotes unhappiness and keeps us stuck in unhappy cycles, Eckhart Tolle says, for example, saying I am ruined is a story. It limits you and prevents you from taking effective action. I have 50 cents left in my bank account is a fact. Facing facts is always empowering. Be aware that what you think to a large extent creates the emotions that you feel. See the link between your thinking and your emotions. Rather than being your thoughts and emotions, be the awareness behind them. And then he concludes by saying, don't seek happiness. If you seek it, you won't find it, because seeking it is the antithesis of happiness. Happiness is ever elusive, but freedom from unhappiness is attainable now by facing what is rather than making up stories about it. Unhappiness covers up your natural state of well-being and inner peace, the source of true happiness. Now, this leads us to the second thing that I learned about happiness, and is that happiness is available to us right now at every second. If you take your life moment to moment, okay? You don't sit there while you're doing things and stressing about the things you're doing because you want to escape your past or you want to have a better future, then you will never be happy, because first of all, you're escaping the unhappiness of your past, and then you're putting your happiness into the future. So this does not mean that, okay, I want to escape unhappiness and I don't want to go and wait for happiness. That doesn't mean that I'm going to go out right now and go and get some drugs. That's not what it means. What it means is that right now, what am I doing? Say, for example, I'm trying to get in shape, or I'm trying to read a book, or I'm trying to improve something, or I'm just trying to work or do anything. Instead of just stressing about who I used to be or who I want to be, I am who I am right now, and I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be alive. I'm happy to be able to read a book, Of course, we as humans tend to compare ourselves and tend to have dreams for ourselves. And I think that's completely normal. The problem is when you go unconscious about these things, where you put so much value in your past or your future that you always forget to live your life right now, that you always forget that you could be happy right now. And actually, the thing is, you're not going to have these great, extraordinary, happy moments in life all the time. You know what I mean? Like, when you think about people and how they celebrate their happiness and their wins, it's very elusive. Like he said, like, it just passes by. Okay, you graduate. All right, there's a high. Everyone is celebrating you. The next day, back to reality. Then what? Are you not happy anymore? Are you not happy anymore? Are you gonna just wait for the next year when you're gonna get a promotion, or for 2 years from now when you're gonna get engaged, and then 5 years from now when you're gonna get married? Like, do you just wait for those moments to be happy in life? No. And the same thing happens when you just look at your past, right? And you just think about how unhappy your past is, how, X, Y, and Z robbed you from a beautiful past, a beautiful childhood, a beautiful teenagehood. When you start thinking about these narratives and just being stuck in them, you won't have a happy present and a happy future. That's just how it is. It's like you need to make peace with it. Yes, we know the world can be unfair, it can be unjust. However, when you keep your stuff stuck, then that unhappiness lies on your shoulders. And like I said, good and bad moments, they pass quickly. The reason why we believe bad moments persist longer is because the negative emotions and the negative thoughts that we have around them. So if your negative thoughts are the ones that are on repeat every day, obviously you're going to think that unhappiness persists, right? And it's like the root of trauma. One thing happens, and it can be a small or big thing, and it's not the trauma itself that you keep reliving, but it's the emotions and the thoughts around the trauma that you keep carrying every single day, which makes you unhappy. And I think that's the root of unhappiness. And to counter that, you have to take every moment of life, you have to be grateful for every moment of life, and basically detach your emotions to it, or have your emotions, experience your emotions, but be the awareness, like he said, behind those emotions. Be aware, like, oh, I'm very happy, or oh, this made me sad, but this is gonna pass, or even the happiness is gonna pass, and I'm just happy to be alive. I'm happy to be a being in this world. So when you slow down and you start to recognize that, it actually becomes easier to be happier every single day. I can see this as my happiness compounds. So the more I'm being present, the more I'm being grateful and happy about right now, what I'm doing, or even when I'm not happy, but I'm just accepting that I'm not happy and that it's gonna pass, I feel so much lighter, okay? I'm not chasing happiness. I'm not delaying happiness. I'm being happy with what is right now. Another thing that I learned is that we are unhappy as human beings because we live in a highly consumerist society, and therefore to be happy you need to attain something, okay? You need to attain social status, you need to attain money, you need to attain the perfect relationship, the perfect body, the perfect grades, the perfect everything. So with this mindset of you cannot be happy until you have X, Y, and Z, obviously you're always going to be miserable, because the moment you get something, that high is going to be gone, and you're going to have to go for another thing and another thing, another thing, another thing. I'm not saying that ambition is a bad thing. I'm not saying that it's our society that's all evil. I'm saying that we need to recognize this, because the thing is, if you're tying your happiness, okay, towards all these external factors and all these things that present happiness or are sold to us as happiness, then obviously you're gonna keep on wanting more, wanting more, wanting more, wanting to show off more, wanting to have more in order to be happy, because that's the message that's being sent out. Now, that doesn't mean that if you have little, okay, that you are so much more happier than another person. That is also a faulty mentality, because you're again trying to prove something to yourself or to the world about happiness, right? So it doesn't mean that you cannot want things. It doesn't mean that you cannot strive to work towards things. But it's that by the process of going there every single day, every single moment, you should be happy doing what you're doing. You should be happy being alive. You should be happy to be conscious, okay, and to have this brain that you have. He says here, but we cannot really honor things if we use them as a means to self-enhancement. That is to say, if we try to find ourselves through them. This is exactly what the ego does. Ego identification with things creates attachment to things, obsession with things, which in turn creates our consumer society and economic structures where the only measure of progress is always more. The unchecked striving for more, for endless growth, is a dysfunction and a disease. It is the same dysfunction the cancerous cell manifests, whose only goal is to multiply itself, unaware that it is bringing about its own destruction by destroying the organism of which it is a part of. A large part of many people's lives is consumed by an obsessive preoccupation with things. This is why one of the ills of our times is object proliferation. When you no longer feel the life that you are likely to try to fill up your life with things. And that's why we are always buying things and needing the new thing to feel happiness, right? You know how it's like an online trend on TikTok where people are like, oh, I'm gonna cure my depression by buying something this week, by buying something, going back in online shopping to cure the depression, shopaholic. And like, yes, it's a joke, but it's not a joke because that's the reality that most people live in. Why do you think that Amazon is such a prolific business? It's because we're all addicted to filling that void because we're not happy in ourselves and we're not happy by just being. We think that we're happy by having more, by doing more, okay? Instead, we should just be more present to be happier. And in this way, he explains that the ego tends to equate having with being. I have, therefore I am. And the more I have, the more I am. The ego lives through comparison. How you're seen by others turns into how you see yourself. If everyone lived in a mansion or everyone was wealthy, your mansion or your wealth would no longer serve to enhance your sense of self. So that's the problem. It's all back to the ego and how we want to present ourselves to feel better about ourselves, but we don't have to present ourselves to feel better about ourselves. The most happiest people out there, doesn't matter what they have or don't have, it's that they're present and they're one with themselves and with the consciousness of who they are and how everything is interconnected in our world, right? And that's what makes happiness happiness. And that's what makes happiness a sense of peace, right? Because if you're always chasing, then you're always stressed. How the hell are you gonna be fucking happy if you're always chasing, if you're always improving, if you're always doing? Now, I'm saying this as someone who's very much into the productivity. I wanna write more, I wanna read more, I wanna do more, right? And I take time in my day to assess what I'm feeling and where this feeling is coming from and why do I think I need to do more and have more in order to feel like I'm more, right? So that's another thing that I learned about happiness. Now, the last thing that I learned about happiness is that it is largely tied to gratitude. Now, before 2023, and it can be shameful to admit this, but at the same time, I'm not ashamed because I recognize that I was living in a very unhealed kind of trauma response to my whole life. And although I still have trauma, right? I know how to like disentangle myself from the trauma and recognize that it just was things that happened. And now I have, the possibility to separate and just consciously sit with it. And that's another thing. This mindfulness of sitting with it makes you realize that there are a lot of things to be grateful for. So going back to mental health and going back to having borderline personality disorder, it is very hard to feel like you have things to be grateful for when every day felt like emotional landfill. Like it felt like emotionally I'm getting torn apart. I'm getting stabbed in the heart. I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't stop just feeling all the negative emotion, having my thoughts on a very, very negative loop. It's like you're playing negative thoughts on a stereo at the loudest decibel and you're just stuck in that house listening to it. The last thing I ever wanted to do was be grateful for it. Or be grateful for my life, be grateful for the things around me, be grateful for what I had, be grateful for where I am, be grateful that I survived, be grateful that I didn't die all those times that I was doing stuff, self-harming, trying to take my life. The thing is, I feel like if I would have found somehow the message of gratitude and really aligned with it, I would have felt better already. So actually what I think did save me in some regards, did give me that motivation to keep on going, is that I always told myself, if I survive this, I will help as many people as I can. And that was my way of not understanding that was gratitude, because I take the worst thing of my life, transform it, and help others. Okay, and that's because I'm grateful that I survived it, and I'm grateful if others can be, helped or can feel less alone out there, right? So that was my only way of kind of expressing gratitude, because I always had that thought that like, if I make it out, I'm going to help as many people as I can. So yes, I was a very bitter and cynical person, especially towards myself, but I held on to that hope. And gratitude just reminds you that we are all human, we're all living a human experience, and we all suffer, okay? You cannot have happiness without unhappiness. And like I said, unhappiness is gonna come knocking often, and it's up to you. If you open that door, let him come and sit, and then he leaves, or if you wanna wait there at the door, scared every day, as unhappiness knocks every fucking day at your door, and you're just in a high stress every single day because you're trying to escape unhappiness, because you didn't learn how to embrace it and to disentangle yourself from it. So every day in the last few months, I've been writing in the morning, doing my morning pages. You guys know I did this whole video on journaling and morning pages, and just being grateful all the time for who I am, what I am, my life, my environment, my parents, my relationships, everything that I am and everything that I have has made me so much happier. Now, it's not to say that I don't still wish things and I don't still want things and I don't still work for things, but it's made my day-to-day life so much more peaceful. And I've been even like looking beyond myself, like praying and writing about current events and writing about people in my life where I'm like praying that they feel happy, they feel lightness, and all those type of things that like in the past when people said things like that, I was like, you know, like eye roll, like come on, like no one does that. But really, like people do that. People really do realize how much we are to be grateful for and to be happy for when we take the time to separate from those negative emotions by embracing them but just observing them. So I hope you found this video helpful. These are just the little things that I learned about happiness, and it took me a long time to learn these things. And I know that I'm gonna have happy, unhappy moments in my life, and I'm okay with both. And I'm okay to just, you know, go through the motions, because that's what life is about, right? I hope that this helped you. I hope that this gave you a new tool to use, a new practice to use. Like maybe you wanna be more grateful every day. Maybe you wanna be more present every day. Maybe you know all of this and I'm the only one that is coming to this conclusion, but it seems to me that a lot of people just keep on reliving the most traumatic parts of their life. And I don't think they are to blame, because that was me for a very long time, and I still sometimes feel myself and see myself slipping back into that type of pattern and thought pattern and emotional pattern. Especially as someone with borderline personality disorder, it can be very easy sometimes to just lose it and be back into where I used to be. So that's why I'm trying to be more mindful, and I continue to make these videos to help other people, but also to remind myself how far I've come, but how far I still can go, but by still being present and happy for every single day, because every single day is a gift. So I hope you pick up this book, A New Earth. I will link it down below, and I'll link his other book down below as well. And if you like this type of video, I will make more types of video like this coming up, because I just really like using literature inside my videos. And as you guys know, I have a second channel that talks about writing and literature, and that one is linked down below as well. As always, I love you guys so much, and I'll see you on the next shelf. Bye!